Alright guys, if you've been following along, then you know now that the winner of the What Am I Building Now is the Mazda RX-7 through process of elimination. This was the only one that didn't get kicked off the island. So we're getting started on it now. It's been raining like crazy here all day long, so there won't be any chance I get to paint or prime anything. So we're just starting a little bit of simple assembly here. The engine needs quite a bit of detail work, as I'm going to try and build it to match the real engine here. So I'm going to do a little more research and get a little more information on it. So here is our block. This, if you're not familiar with the Mazda RX-7, is a rotary engine. It's basically got a little triangle in the middle that spins around within the cylinder. Not really even a cylinder, more of a bore. And that gives you your compression and your power stroke and your exhaust. So it makes power in less time than a piston engine because it doesn't have as many strokes to its combustion, and really winds up like crazy. If you've ever heard one of these things, they have a really unique sound. Now, interesting thing about the way they're built, piston engines have cylinders. Mazda engines have two rotors, one here and one here. These are actually basically what you would compare to the cylinders in a car. So this is a two rotor engine in this car. And here you have your two spark plugs, one for each rotor, or two for each rotor. It's an interesting design. It started with the Wankel back in, I think, the 60s is when it was first developed. And General Motors played with it for a little while, and a few other manufacturers. And the one limitation this engine has is that they are not very durable. I don't think anyone's ever been able to make one that will outlast a piston engine. But they make crazy power. They rev forever. And they're just a blast to drive. Now this engine here is really nicely detailed. I mean, well, relative to when it was made. As you can actually see the rotors here, where the spark plugs into the rotor chambers. There is the intake, or part of the intake. The rest of it's going to have to be installed. And the exhaust will be coming out this way. The exhaust is actually partially built into the chassis. Now this is just two halves of the block go together. Do a little bit of smoothing out just to even out the back there. There's not really that much cleaning that's going to be needed, as most of the seams are going to be covered by the parts they lay over them. This one you won't see because it'll lay up against the firewall. This one's covered by the front cover, and up here you're covered by the intake. Now, as I stated before in the unboxing video, this is a low parts count kit from Tamiya. Even though it's excellently molded and casted, they kind of took the easy way out here. Instead of giving us the full transmission to build, all you have is the transmission bolted into the chassis, the oil pan, and a turbo sitting here. So basically your whole engine is mostly just dropping it right in the engine compartment there, attaching it to the oil pan, and your engine is installed. I mean, there are other portions such as the front cover here, and we also have the intake that gets bolted on. So they're going to have to be cleaned up a little bit and all attached. Now, since it's been raining non-stop here all day long, I won't be able to do any painting, so all I'm doing is a little bit of assembly and cleaning up some of the parts, getting them ready for paint. So here we have the front cover. Now the front cover is going to need a little bit of cleaning up, just to get rid of some of the seams. Don't really want that to be seen. Let me see, where did I put my knife? That's not it. Don't know where I put my knife. Okay, give me a second, guys. Found it right where I put it so that I wouldn't lose it. Now, seams, the mold lines really bug me. Now, there's a couple of mold lines here. Where was I? Oh, sorry, I was working on the front cover. As you can see, there are... Let me see if we can really get a look at that. Okay, right there and there are mold lines there, and running across here and here. So those are what I'm going to be working on removing before I attach the front cover. But in usual Tamiya fashion, the parts just fall together. It is a thing of beauty how well they just go together. There is no guesswork. There is no make it fit. They just, boom, go together. That is the beauty of their engineering. Now, it does take a bit of a challenge out, as my last build, my last automotive build was the Opel GT from AMT, and that, to say it was challenging, is an understatement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these seams. Hold on. Alright, what I like to do is I use my knife to just carve away at these seams just to make them less noticeable. And then I go in with my sanding sticks and clean up the marks left by the knife. Is it completely necessary? No, as you're not even going to see half of this, but to me it's the fun part of modeling, where you do the details even if they're not going to be seen. And there we go. As you can see now, I am much happier with that. Not really much to do there. Just take a good look there. Let's clean up our screw marks. Yeah, this weather today is just kind of sucked. I was really hoping to have parts primed and at least somewhat ready for paint, at least have the engine block painted. But it just really was not going to happen today. Okay, I think I'm very happy with this part here. There we go. This is one of the best fitting front covers of any engine that I've dealt with in a while. As not only did they give you a locating pin that goes into the slot here, you also have a tab on the bottom here where it's just pin goes in, tab slots in, and you're done. Perfect alignment. Not like the AMT I worked on, which I had to basically reshape the front of the engine in order to make everything fit. There we go. And I do believe that will do it for basic assembly of the engine block. Cover, the block is done. Everything else from here on out is going to require paint and priming. So the most I can do right now is just cut out of the trees. This build is going to go pretty quick, unless as usual I decide to overcomplicate things. Because I like to put as much detail as I can into it, which is where all of the research comes in, which is part of the fun for me. Now here we can see you have seam lines here on the intake. Now that is going to be visible right on the top of the engine, so that's going to have to be cleaned up. And you see this here? That is a lot of flash for a Tamiya kit. So basically we're going to have to do the same process again. We're just going to shave down I usually work around the sprue. I try to remove as much as I can from the sprue so that when I paint them, the sprue doesn't get in the way, but sometimes I leave one piece connected to one small section that I can touch up by hand later, as it really won't be that visible. If it's just a tiny little part, and sometimes I look and see where I can hide it the most, and that's where I'll leave it connected to the sprue. Some guys paint everything on the sprue, some guys remove the piece completely from the sprue. For me, I just find it easier to do it this way. As you can see, that seam is now on its way to being gone. And we are on our way to having a completely rounded intake tube. I'm trying to keep this on that sprue, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And when that happens, that's when the toothpicks and there we go. As you can see here, now we're very rounded. You don't see the seam anymore. Except for right here. So let's get a little bit of that off. Just a little bit right here. And to me, this is the fun part of modeling. Whereas anybody could just put the pieces together. And there's nothing wrong if you do that. Yeah, some guys just like to have a very nice representation of their favorite car to put on a shelf. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for me, I like the cleaning up of the parts and all of the detail work. And believe me, I'm far from the world's greatest scale modeler, but this part is a part, as you can see there, smooth now. That makes this fun for me. There we go. Just clean it off. And then smooth it out. There we go. Now it looks like a nice smooth aluminum intake. Not off there, off there, off here. Now we work. This is where it gets tricky. When you have to go into the inner recesses of a part. Because all of that will be visible. And that's when the needle files come out. As they can get into all of the nooks and crannies that, let me just gotta get the right one. Here we go. And there we go. Seam is gone now. Now we're just gonna have to go over. It's easy to miss a spot. I really like these sanding sticks here, which I picked up from Hobby Lobby. And these also, which allow you to get into a little bit closer quarters. There we go. Nice. Done. Now all we need is a little bit of primer. But we can take a look at this here. If you look at the instructions, we're looking at that sitting just like that. And look at that. Again, tamiya, perfect fit. Now we won't be gluing that on as we still have a lot of paint work to do to the engine. But you can see there, basically a completed block. Now the last thing we need is our belt drive assembly. I mean, the tamiya parts fit so well, I can just drop it on there and it doesn't fall off. I'm gonna cut that there and that there. And other than just having to nip off, this is why, you know, try not to cut too close to the part when you remove them from the screws, so that you have a little bit of working area. And that is done and ready for paint. Or ready for primer and then paint. Well guys, that is step number 1 on this build, which is as far as we can go right now, because now we have to start applying paint to the engine, to the chassis. So let's just cut the chassis out. As that's going to require so here we go. All the parts, or most of the parts needed for step 1 and step 2. And get them together. Now when you guys build, do you paint everything all at once, or do you guys just paint as you go along? I find that I paint as I go along when I decide, because I change my mind so often. I don't want to jump ahead of anything. And as I look for details and do research, I try to match things as close as I can to the real car. Oh, here we go. We also need part number F10. Another thing I love about Tamiya is they label all of their sprues. So if I need F, I just go right to sprue F and look for part number 10. Okay, here's F10, which is our brake master cylinder. Another part is going to require paint. So let's just get it ready now for a little bit for our paint work. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a seam here also. So let's clean that up a bit. So if you guys have been watching the channel, if you had a chance to watch the channel, I put up a few unboxing videos this weekend. Some interesting stuff. I can see that we're just slightly over. Well, let me start from the beginning. As I was looking for my next project, I started going through my stash, and I found a whole bunch of stuff from way back that I have never built. A lot of really interesting kits, or interesting to me anyway. I think you guys will find it interesting too. And I'm looking at the amount of subscribers. We're over 400 now, and I'm thrilled about that. So I figure if we can get over 500 subscribers, and if you guys are interested, I will put up a video going over everything in my stash. Basically, that I've been collecting since the, I want to say, mid to early 80s. And there's a bunch of interesting stuff in there. So if we can get over 500, I'll make a special video for you guys, and I will pull everything out of my closets so that I can show you guys everything that's in the stash. And it's going to be a lot of effort to do that, but I figure if you guys can back me up and get me to 500, it's the least that I can do for you guys. So that is pretty much... Oh, wait, hold on. What is this here? F8. We need another part from sprue F. F8. This, whatever this is. I'm not even sure what this is. Okay. I'm not really sure what this part is, but we have it here. Definitely gonna do a little research. Don't know if maybe this is a hydraulic unit for the anti-lock brakes. I'm going to say that that's probably what it looks like. But it does sit here. Where does this go? Okay, that does sit there. Or here. I guess a flip-flop, depending on right or left-hand drive. So, there we go, guys. Just a quick look into the preliminary steps in building this kit. And, we're on our way now. After all these years, since, let me see, I bought this kit when it was new. In 1992. Since 1992, this thing has been bouncing back and forth off the bench. And now it's finally here. And you guys get to see it all. Alright, that's going to do it for tonight. Remember, like, subscribe, follow along. This should be a fun build. And I'll see you on the next one.